Slowly close your eyes and take a deep breath. Today, I am going to take you to a place in the world that no longer exists, but has never been erased from memory. There is no need to rush. There is nothing you need to catch up to on this journey. The rhythm of the waves, the sound of the wind, and the flapping wings of seagulls coming from afar will accompany you. Now the pages of your calendar are gently turning backward. The year is 1912, one of spring's cool but hopeful days. As the first light of morning paints Southampton Harbor in England gold, you are walking slowly through the crowd. The air is cold, but not uncomfortably so. The smell of salt rising from the sea mingles with the faint smoky scent of coal dust. The voices of workers at the harbor can be heard from a distance. Wooden crates are being carefully carried. Suitcases are being loaded onto carts. Mail sacks are being delivered to ships. There is a strange kind of order in the middle of all this activity. Nobody is running in a panic. Everyone is already well aware that a great day has begun. The small leather bag in your hand presses lightly against your palm. Inside, there are only a few changes of clothes, a book you love, and a few small belongings you wanted to have with you throughout the journey. You feel the edges of the ticket in your pocket with your fingers. You can feel the texture of the thick paper. That small ticket is not taking you on an ordinary journey, but aboard a ship that people will talk about for years to come. As you make your way through the crowd, people slowly step to the side, and all at once the view in front of you opens up completely. Before you stands the enormous Titanic. You recognize her from the drawings you have seen in newspapers. You have heard her name countless times. Yet no newspaper page, no photograph, and no story could have described the effect of seeing her for the first time with your own eyes. The ship's black hull stretches along the harbor. Her red lower section is clearly visible just above the water. Looking up, white decks rising tier upon tier continue toward the sky. 4 great funnels rise silently in the morning sun. Each one stands perfectly upright, as if representing the power of a new century. You stop for a moment and simply watch. The conversations around you slowly fade away. Sometimes the human mind needs a few seconds to make sense of what it sees. This is exactly one of those moments. You feel like a tiny human being standing before the world's largest passenger ship. Yet this feeling is not frightening. On the contrary, it leaves inside you a sweet sense of wonder that stirs one's curiosity. The wind blows gently. The ropes of the other ships moored in the harbor stretch quietly. Seagulls glide in wide circles around Titanic's funnels. The sea is almost as calm as glass. Small ripples forming on the surface of the water touch the ship's hull and quietly recede. Officers are greeting passengers. They wear dark uniforms and caps on their heads. Their every movement is measured and calm. When you hand your ticket to the officer, he gives you a brief glance, then nods with a gentle smile, and you move toward the ship. You take your first step onto the wooden gangway. The faint creak of the planks reaches your ears. Beneath the gangway, the sea moves softly. With every step you take a little further from land, an entirely different world opens up before you. When you reach the ship's deck, the first thing that catches your attention is the silence. People are talking, of course, luggage is being carried, officers are giving directions. But the chaos you would have expected from such a large ship is nowhere to be found. Everything seems to be moving to the tempo of some invisible orchestra. Gleaming brass railings reflect the morning light. The wooden deck has been carefully cleaned and polished. It leaves a smooth sensation underfoot. An officer is gently hosing down the deck. Water moves in a thin layer across the planks, then trickles down through small drains into the sea. You take a deep breath. The smell of the sea is more distinct here. As you fill your lungs with the salty air, you feel as though the city you have left behind is slowly drifting away. You are guided to one of the corridors. The moment you step inside, the sounds of the outside world gently fade. The walls of the corridor are lined with light-colored wooden panels. The lamps in the ceiling have not yet fully come on, because the morning light filtering through the windows fills everything with a natural brightness. As you walk, the sound of your footsteps almost disappears on the carpet. Different people pass alongside you through the corridor. A young couple is talking in whispers. An elderly gentleman is looking around, leaning lightly on his cane. When you open the door, the key makes a soft sound. You look inside. A small but tidy room. The wooden furniture has been freshly polished. The white sheets have been laid perfectly. Daylight coming in through the round porthole spreads a gentle brightness through the room. You set your bag beside the bed. You remove your hat and hang it on the small hook. For a moment, you step close to the window. Outside, the harbor is still busy. People are continuing their final preparations. A whistle sounds from a distance, then a brief silence, and then Titanic's deep, full-bodied horn fills the entire harbor. The sound is so powerful that you feel a faint vibration in your chest. Seagulls take flight all at once. People in the harbor stop and look at the ship. Some wave handkerchiefs, some embrace their loved ones one last time. You, however, simply stand before the window and watch this moment. Perhaps this will be the first image you remember years from now. Inside you, there is a sense of peace that is difficult to describe. You do not know how the days ahead will pass, but it is precisely this uncertainty that makes the journey beautiful. You gently part the curtain and look out at the sea one last time. The sunlight on the water shines as though it has been broken into thousands of tiny pieces. The ship's engines are just beginning to turn slowly. The steady vibration coming from deep below spreads from beneath your feet through the entire hull. It is not unpleasant. On the contrary, it is reminiscent of a great living creature slowly beginning to breathe. And you, right now, are inside what is said to be the world's largest passenger ship. A ship that even God could not sink. Just minutes into the journey, and you feel that the calm days stretching out ahead of you have only just begun. As the ship's hull continues to vibrate gently, you step away from the window and quietly close the cabin door behind you. When you step out into the corridor, the air inside feels a little warmer than the cool spring morning outside. The faint scent of polished wood mingles with the freshness of newly washed carpets. A few officers moving through the corridor are settling passengers' bags into their rooms one last time. Some are checking lists in their hands. Some are giving directions with a smile. Everyone is doing their work without hurrying. Even on a ship this large, order reigns in place of haste. You slow your steps. There is no particular place you need to go. This is the most beautiful thing about this journey. The only thing waiting for you throughout the day ahead is discovery. At the end of the corridor, a wide staircase appears, framed with brass railings. As you approach the steps, daylight filtering from above traces soft patterns on the marble floor below. When you look up, an elegant piece of architecture rising through the decks catches your eye. The ornamental details running across the ceilings, the fine wooden carvings on the walls, and the lamps carefully placed at every corner make you feel that this is not merely a mode of transport, but a floating hotel. As you climb the stairs at an unhurried pace, nobody tries to pass you. A lady adjusts her gloves as she makes her way up. Two gentlemen in suits are having a calm conversation about the news they read in the papers. A few children are looking at the brightness of the stair railings in wonder, but everyone has the same expression on their face: curiosity. When you step out onto the upper deck, The clean air from the sea gently touches your face again. The harbor is still spread out before your eyes, yet it no longer looks the way it did when you were standing on shore. This time the city stands before you from a different angle, as if you were much higher up. Warehouses, cranes, funnels, and small vessels lined along the quay seem like a living painting in the morning sun. You step up to the railing and rest both hands on the polished brass. The ship's metal deck has been cool through the night and is still slightly cold. You feel a smooth surface beneath your fingers. The dock workers below now look smaller. A cargo cart moves slowly along the rails. Horse-drawn carriages bring the last few crates. In every corner of the harbor there is a separate movement, yet amidst all this movement there is a rhythm that soothes the soul. For a while you do nothing and simply watch your surroundings. The sea stirs ever so gently. As the sun rises, the color of the water shifts from deep blue to bright navy. The wind occasionally changes direction and carries the smell of coal rising from the funnels briefly across the deck. An elderly couple nearby stands silently looking at the harbor. The woman studies the distance through a small pair of binoculars, while the man glances at the pocket watch he has taken from his coat. A few steps away, a young photographer is setting up his large wooden camera. Passengers take turns stepping in front of the lens. Some smile, some look on with a serious expression. Nobody, of course, knows that the photographs taken that day will be kept in family albums for years to come. For now, everyone is simply savoring this moment. In a corner of the deck, a white uniformed officer is giving the brass railings one final polish. The sunlight dances so beautifully on the metal that you find yourself unable to look away for several seconds. Cleaning staff are carefully inspecting the wooden floor, wiping away even the smallest drop of water with their cloths. The attention to detail in every corner of the ship is palpable, and you continue walking. An officer passes you carrying a silver tray of teacups. The delicate porcelain cups touching one another lightly almost sounds like a small melody in your ears. Before long, the smell of freshly baked bread drifts toward you from a nearby salon. Even though you did not think you were hungry, this warm smell genuinely awakens your appetite. As you move toward the front of the deck, the wind grows a little stronger. You hold the brim of your hat lightly. Looking out toward the horizon, it is nearly impossible to make out where the sky meets the sea. That blue of the sea slowly blends into another shade of blue. When a person looks at a view like this for a long time, they feel as though time has slowed. When you turn around, you notice once again just how large the ship is. The funnels look enormous even from below. The decks stretch on tier after tier. The windows reflect the sunlight. A few crew members are checking the ropes one last time. Every movement is calm, assured, and practiced. After all of this, the vibration coming from the ship's engine grows a little more distinct. This time, you feel it not only beneath your feet, but in your hands as well when you lean against the railing. Titanic is now truly preparing to move. The dock workers begin to cast off the ropes. The thick ropes ease away slowly and separate from the great bollards. The nearby tugboats sound their horns. Most of the passengers on the deck move toward the railings. You quietly take your place among them. Some wave handkerchiefs. Some remove their hats and smile at the loved ones they are leaving behind one last time. Others, like you, simply choose to watch this great moment in silence. Nobody shouts or calls out. It is as though everyone is aware they are witnessing history, yet feels no need to put it into words. The ship's hull begins to move forward in a way that is almost imperceptible. For the first few seconds, you do not even realize it is moving. Then you notice the posts and warehouses on the quay quietly falling behind. Small ripples form on the surface of the water. The steady rhythmic force of the propellers spreads through the entire ship like a pulse that brings with it a sense of calm. As Southampton Harbor slowly falls behind, only a boundless journey stretches out before you, and you, both hands on the railing, feeling the touch of the cool breeze on your face, continue to quietly take in every detail of this extraordinary morning. As the harbor begins to grow smaller behind you, your eyes linger on the shore for a long time. The quay you left only minutes ago is now slowly fading into the morning mist. Southampton's funnels turn to thin lines on the horizon. The warehouses stretching along the coast blend into one another, and at last the piece of land disappears into the blue where the sea and sky meet. And now before you there is only open sea. Titanic has set off on her planned maiden voyage. The first destination on this journey is the port of Cherbourg on the southwest coast of France. Here, new passengers will be taken on from France. Then the route will turn to Queenstown Harbor in Ireland, known today as Cobb. The final stop will be New York, thousands of kilometers away. Throughout this long voyage of roughly 5.5 days, the broad waters of the Atlantic Ocean will accompany you. The captain gradually increases the ship's speed. The movement that was almost imperceptible at first can now be understood from the way the water parts to either side. Walking toward the front of the deck, you can see the foam opening in two white lines from Titanic's bow. The sea is calm. The wind is not harsh. Thin clusters of cloud move slowly across the sky. The weather is milder than one might expect for April. For a while you lean on the railings and simply watch the water. When a person first ventures out onto open sea, they encounter a strange kind of silence. The rumble of cities is gone. The sounds of factories are gone. The wheels of horse-drawn carriages, the cries of street vendors, the ringing of church bells. All of it has been left behind on land for now. Out here there is only wind, waves, and the steady hum of the ship's engines coming from somewhere deep below. With time, that sound no longer feels strange to your ears. On the contrary, you notice that it is always there, like the beating of your own heart. Toward midday, the activity on the deck increases a little. Passengers have now settled into their rooms. People are beginning to explore the ship. Some are walking. Some are sitting in deck chairs reading. Some have already started their first conversations with the new acquaintances they will make during the voyage. In one corner, an elderly gentleman is setting up a chessboard. A few meters away, a young couple is talking about their plans for the future while gazing at the horizon. Children are running here and there in the excitement of discovering the ship's great size. But when an officer gently asks them to walk, they slow down right away. You, however, are making your way along the deck with unhurried steps. Every plank of the wooden floor has been laid with care. As the sun rises higher, the polished surface begins to shine gold. The brass details on the railings reflect the light. The deck chairs are arranged in neat rows. Some of them have passengers sitting in them wrapped in blankets. Since the sea air is cooler than expected, officers are handing out woolen blankets to those who wish for them. You take one and drape it over your knees and sit for a little while. Time passes differently here. When you look at your watch, you see that only 20 minutes have gone by, yet you feel as though you have been watching the sea for far longer. This is perhaps the most curious thing that the open sea does to a person. It makes hurrying feel meaningless. Instead of thinking about the next minute, you sink into the very moment you are in. In the afternoon, the faint sound of a piano begins to drift from the ship's interior salons. Curious, you make your way inside. The grand salon is even more spacious than you had imagined. The chandeliers hanging from the ceiling pass the daylight through their crystals and cast small pieces of light on the floor below. In one corner, a young pianist is playing gentle pieces. Passengers unconsciously lower their voices as they talk. Nobody wants to disturb this peaceful atmosphere. Waiters in white gloves serve tea, coffee, and small refreshments. The smell of tea rising from the fine porcelain cups mingles with the warmth and flavor of buttered scones. As the hours pass, the sun begins to lean toward the west. When you step back outside from the salon, the color of the sky is different from the morning. The pale blue tones give way to soft oranges. The line of the horizon brightens with a golden yellow. The sea too changes color as if following the lead of the sky. Brief copper reflections form on the crests of the waves. Titanic moves silently through these lights in all her grandeur. As evening draws near, the air begins to cool a little more. The wind now touches the lapels of your coat gently. Officers begin to light the lamps on the deck one by one. The yellow light adds a warm tone to the wooden floor. In the distance, thin smoke rising from the funnels blends into the evening sky. As the sun descends below the horizon one last time, a deep calm settles all around. The sounds of seagulls you heard throughout the day have gone completely silent. Land is far behind now. Around you there is only the vastness of the Atlantic Ocean. Slowly, the first star appears in the sky, then one more, then dozens. Because you are so far from the city lights, the sky appears clearer to you than you have ever known it. The Milky Way passes over your head like a thin white ribbon. Some passengers stop talking and simply look upward. It is clear that some of them are seeing a sky like this for the very first time in their lives. You too instinctively slow your breathing. As the silence of the night, the rhythm of the sea and the ship's steady pace all blend into one another, time slows again. Longer days lie ahead of you, new corners to discover and countless silent stories the ocean has yet to tell. Yet this first night feels to you like nothing more than a quiet beginning. As the silence of the night slowly gives way to a new morning, Titanic turns her course toward France's port of Cherbourg. The lights of the harbor, reached after sunset, cast golden reflections on the sea from a distance. Since the harbor is not deep enough, the ship does not pull up to the quay. Instead, small vessels come silently alongside Titanic. New passengers are carefully brought aboard with their luggage. Some mail is handed over, and once this brief flurry of activity is complete, the voyage begins again. Looking out from the deck, the lights of the distant French coastline grow smaller and smaller. This brief stop becomes the first greeting of the ship's long journey. The following morning, as you open your eyes to the cool sea air, lush green hills appear on the horizon. Titanic has arrived at Queenstown Harbor in Ireland, known today as Cobb. The morning sun falls on the windows of the houses along the shore. Small vessels move quietly around the ship again. This time the last passengers are boarding. Some carry small bags, some wave to family left on shore and say their goodbyes. A few passengers are leaving the ship here. The movement at the harbor feels less like a great commotion and more like an orderly farewell. A short while later, the horn sounds again. The ropes are cast off, and Titanic slowly begins to move away from the Irish coastline. The land gradually falls behind. The green hills first grow smaller, then disappear completely into the morning mist. There are no more ports left to call at ahead. The route from here is the open waters of the Atlantic Ocean, stretching for thousands of kilometers. The only view you will see for days on end will be the deep blue water of that sea. The noise of cities has been left far behind. Ahead lies only the quiet rhythm of the ocean and Titanic's unhurried, steady voyage. Days follow one another in silence. Every morning the sun rises over the ocean. Every evening it disappears behind the horizon. Titanic continues pressing westward with the same calm resolve. Time aboard the ship flows in an entirely different way now. Passengers have begun to get to know one another. The corridors are filled with familiar faces. The crew carries on with their duties without ever breaking their usual routine. You too find yourself falling into the rhythm of this great voyage without even noticing. The steady hum of the engines rising from deep below, the gentle touch of the waves against the ship's hull, and the endless tranquility of the sea have by now become a familiar part of every day. Then one morning, the whispers of people walking on the deck catch your attention. Looking toward the horizon, a faint silhouette begins to emerge from the endless blue of the sea. As the hours pass, that silhouette grows larger. Harbor cranes, jetties, and rising buildings slowly become visible. Titanic, after so many long days at sea, is now approaching her final destination of New York. The ship's speed slows. As tugboats draw alongside, the sound of horns from the harbor blends into the morning air. People gathered along the quay watch this great ship with curiosity. Passengers lean against the railings, silently watching the approaching city. Some are excited to be beginning a new life. Some carry with them the joy of being reunited with family they have not seen for years. You, however, are simply savoring this moment without the slightest sense of urgency. Titanic draws gently alongside the berth. The ropes are made fast to the shore, and the ship completes the journey of many days in an elegant silence. Passengers pick up their bags and begin to make their way down with measured steps. When your turn comes, you turn and look back at the ship one last time. The morning sun falls on the funnels. The polished railings gleam in the light just as they did on the very first day. Every moment you spent here blends into a peaceful memory in your mind. As you take your first step onto the jetty, the great horn of the ship you have left behind sounds one final time. It feels almost as though it is quietly bidding you farewell. And you gently smile, adjust your hat, and begin to walk into the crowd. Before you lies a new city, new streets, and a new life. Behind you remain the unforgettable days spent in the middle of the ocean. Perhaps years from now, when you remember this journey, what comes to mind first will not be the size of the ship, but the cool air rising from the sea in the mornings. The sound of footsteps on the deck, the distant seagulls, the nights full of stars, and the unchanging rhythm of the ocean. Sometimes a journey is remembered not by the destination reached, but by the silence it leaves within a person. Now this story too is quietly drawing to its end. Titanic arrived safely in harbor, and you have completed this long voyage. If your eyes are gradually growing heavy, let this peace continue to accompany you. Just as the ocean's waves endlessly reach the shore, let your mind settle gently into stillness. Tonight, let that peaceful rhythm that began on the calm waters of the Atlantic Ocean stay by your side and carry you into a quiet, deep, and beautiful sleep. If you enjoyed our story, please support us by subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications so you can be informed about new videos. Sweet dreams.